Mistakes happen. Despite that apparently not being allowed in wrestling, because when it does we all shout "butch" at the top of our lungs, that doesn't change anything. When human beings are throwing their bodies around for entertainment, you can never be sure it'll go to plan. It goes further than this too, in the sense everybody knows what's meant to happen. Bad enough if somebody gets injured a la Triple H in 2001, but how nuts must it have been for Bret Hart in 1997? That wasn't in the script, and yet now you're out in front of a crowd trying to piece everything together. Sounds like anything but fun. There are loads of these, however, mostly because wrestling is nuts. I'm Simon from What Culture, and this is 10 WWE moments that weren't supposed to happen. Number 10, Matt Hardy slips. Happening on the 11th of September 2017 Raw, there's probably loads of examples like this. It just happens to be one that's freshest in the memory. But during a match between the Hardys, Dean Ambrose and Seth Rollins taking on The Bar and the Good Brothers, which is pretty decent by the way, Matt was all ready to break up the pin. Unfortunately, as he darted towards Ambrose to make sure that Cesaro didn't get the win, Hardy was carrying way too much momentum and just fell over on the floor. It meant the referee had to slow down his 3 count as Matt was meant to stop this from happening, and it was so confusing in the moment even Dean raised his head to see what was going on. In hindsight, it is quite amusing, but I would guess Hardy didn't overly enjoy it at the time. Again, that happening in front of a bunch of fans who are usually vying for blood is just a recipe for disaster. It can happen to anyone, of course. Just here, it happened to Matt Hardy. Number 9, security stop Rob Gronkowski. This one is great, and whoever this was should probably be WWE's main security person given what happened at the Hall of Fame this year. Whatever we have to do to ensure no idiots run into the ring again is what we should do. Either way, back at WrestleMania 33, WWE had planned a spot where at the end of the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal, New England Patriots star Gronkowski would jump the guardrail and help out his mate Mojo Rawley. It was a pretty good use of a celebrity, all things considered, but clearly no one had clued up those tasked with protecting the ring. For you see, when he did try to get in, he was stopped right there on the apron. He wasn't a wrestler and therefore he wasn't allowed to go any further. It took a WWE official running down to ringside to explain that this was 100% okay and part of the fun. The real highlight is the look on Ron's face, who has no idea what to do, and amazingly, as of me talking, WWE hasn't edited this off the network version of the show. Let's hope they never do too. It makes the whole segment feel real, mostly because it was. The lesson is to always make sure everybody who needs to know knows, otherwise where on earth are we going to end up? Number 8, Sheamus bumps arm first through a ladder. Money in the Bank 2013 could have seen Sheamus leaving with a broken arm if this had gone slightly differently. It looked horrendous, and how he didn't hurt himself more is anybody's guess. It was also par for the course too. When Daniel Bryan tipped the Irishman from the top rope through a ladder on the outside, fans got excited, but it's not like we hadn't seen it before. It's just become a spot you can rely on when the stipulation is rolled out. While most break the fall with their back though, Sheamus decided to go through left arm first, and it looked brutal. If you slow it all right down, you can see a look on his face thinking, what have I done? And because the ladder had been manipulated to smash into pieces, it's his arm that takes all the force. He's a tough son of a gun, so he's fine, but when you do watch it back, it will give you chills of fear. And nobody likes chills of fear. Number 7, The Rock's glasses fall off. The most frustrating thing about this one is trying to find the exact episode it happened on SmackDown in 1999. It's hard. We know it happened because there's footage of it, and Mick Foley even spoke about it on one of those behind-the-scenes documentaries WWE loves to make. As the Great One was halfway through his famous go-home line though, he snapped his head towards Mankind, and in that moment his glasses came flying off his head and dropped down near his kind of friend but not really friend's body. Rather than ignore it, The Rock reacted with a wonderful look on his face, as did Foley. They knew it wasn't meant to go down, but that didn't mean it wasn't hilarious. Because he was the people's champ, he refused to pick up his fallen merchandise and instead waited for Mankind to pass him the glasses. When he did, he simply said, "The Rock thanks you for that." And it was genuinely brilliant. One of those times that was better than anything WWE could have scripted. It came with proper emotion because, again, it was real. Love it. Number 6, Triple H gets burned by dry ice. At WrestleMania 29, Triple H already knew he had a long road ahead of him. Booked to go 25 minutes with Brock Lesnar, there was also the stipulation that if the game lost, he would have to retire. That sounds familiar, doesn't it? Either way, he needed to be ready, and his entrance of all things almost made sure that wasn't the case. As he made his way to the ring, complete with elaborate bells and whistles, Triple H got dry ice all over his stomach. This is why it looks like he has snow on him by the time he arrives in the squared circle. What you may not know is that dry ice burns like hell and will leave you in some serious pain, which Trips was throughout the entire match. WWE shared photos of this afterwards, and you can see how serious it is. And how he ever absorbed those miffed riff blows by Lesnar during this, I don't know. It would have been bad enough when the Beast is doing it to a fresh gut, but to one that was technically on fire? Triple H deserves all the praise for this one. It must have been awful, and he carried on regardless. Number 5. WWE accidentally shoots Pyro into the crowd. It's one thing to mistakenly put a wrestler in trouble, it's another to do it to your paying audience. Even so, this is what happened at WrestleMania 24 as WWE went all out to take the rundown Citrus Bowl and make it worthy of hosting an event as big as the show of shows. Ensuring it culminated with a huge firework display after The Undertaker had defeated Edge for the World Heavyweight Championship, it looked amazing as mini explosions flew off into the night sky. Or at least it did for most. Some fans soon discovered that the odd firework had been rigged incorrectly, and instead of going up, were landing at their feet. I don't know whether you've ever been near to something that's designed to blow up, but it's the opposite of good. That would be not good. As the crowd ran away from their seats, others filmed the chaos and uploaded it to YouTube almost as soon as was possible. Thankfully, no one was gravely injured, but some were still hurt, and that's terrible. Again, it wasn't intended, but that's up there with one of the worst things that can happen. You don't want to go out to enjoy yourself and end up running away. Number 4. Steve Austin is accidentally eliminated from the 1996 Royal Rumble. Well, it was always going to happen eventually, right? The Royal Rumble is so nuts I'm amazed it doesn't happen more, especially when the only real mistake that carried any significant weight was when Batista and Cena tumbled over the top in 2004. In 1996, however, Steve Austin had a mini nightmare of his own. As he admitted on his own podcast, he was not meant to go tumbling to the floor when he was clotheslined by Fatu, but he did anyway. He'd been in the ring for around about 10 minutes, but when his grip slipped after over-oiling himself, that was the end of his night. Everyone knew what had happened, but the referees had no choice. We couldn't pretend we hadn't seen it, so Austin had to tuck his tail between his legs and walk to the back. I would guess when he got there, one Vince McMahon was waiting to have a little chat. What was that, pal? It's only fair to point out that Fatu was also well oiled, and that's just a situation that nobody could handle. Double oil? Forget about it. It should be banned from all Royal Rumble events. Number 3, a fan interrupts Seth Rollins' entrance. Right, somehow Seth seems to get himself into these predicaments all the time. This is just round 1. Also WWE, you need to go and get the Gronkowski guard back. She wouldn't let this happen. But on the 7th of September 2015 edition of Raw, Rollins was on his way to the ring for a 6-man tag team match where he would team with the New Day and take on John Cena and the Primetime Players. When he looked to his right, however, some goof wearing a hat was just standing alongside him. Seth was utterly perplexed, and it was written all over his face. Somehow, this fan also walked alongside him for at least 2 seconds before being tackled by security. I know 2 seconds sounds really quick, but it's not if this moron had been holding a weapon. It's a mystery as to how it happened in the first place, like evolution. You can't see this on the network, which is a good thing as it negates the 5 minutes of fame this Poindexter was going after, although of course, YouTube has your back if you're desperate. Number 2, a fan interrupts Seth Rollins' promo. Which brings us to round 2. Almost a year on from Entrance Gate, Seth Rollins had another clash with a fan on the 15th of August 2016 episode of Raw. As he stood in the ring cutting a promo on Finn Balor, there was no way he would ever become the first Universal Champion at SummerSlam. From nowhere, some guy was stood next to him in the ring. Again, they're wearing a hat, and again, WWE had to zoom right in on Seth's face to try and get this schlub out the picture. Rollins rightly pushed the guy away from him and then nervously continued his speech by doing an evil villain-style laugh, but let's not pretend otherwise. This nonsense would shake anyone up because you don't know why they're there or what threat they hold. Seth has no idea, he just wanted to stand in the ring and make himself the center of attention for a few seconds. Also, going back to the hat, I can only assume these jerks are idiots and assume it will protect them if Rollins ever decided to curb stomp their face into the mat. He should have done. Number 1, a fan becomes an honorary Shield member. And then there's round 3, which tickled Bray Wyatt so much he belly laughed on the turnbuckle for an absolute age. That was pretty hilarious. Going down at Night of Champions 2015, Roman Reigns and Dean Ambrose had teased a mystery partner to help them in their war against the Wyatts. This was going to be Chris Jericho, but instead someone who looked like Vin Diesel's child got there first. He stood right next to everybody in full Shield attire as fans wondered what the hell was happening. Now, while people from the crowd getting in the ring is bad every single time, Reigns didn't notice him at first, so for a solid period, it looked like this numpty was actually the surprise. Order was restored when staff removed the doofus from his dream gig and Jericho came out to a massive response. That was cool and all, but we're still waiting for Reigns, Ambrose and Vin Diesel to raise some hell. Know of any other WWE moments that weren't supposed to happen? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Then head over to whatculture.com and read yourself some articles, and follow What Culture on Twitter at WhatCultureWWE. My name is Simon from What Culture. I will talk to you again soon.